Chapter 4. First striketh the command bridge of the Aurora's lament, hummed with quiet intensity as the ship sailed through the dark veil of space. Captain Leo Sterling stood firm at the helm, his eyes fixed on the holographic displays that flickered with incoming data. The starlight cast a soft glow across his determined face, accentuating the deep lines of resolve etched by years of command. Approaching the sector coordinates, Captain, Lieutenant Mira Kalen's voice cut through the silence, her fingers dancing across the navigation console with practiced ease. "Keep us on a low burn, Mira. I want us invisible to their scanners for as long as possible," Sterling replied without taking his eyes off the screen. The distant outpost they were approaching had sent a distress signal an hour ago, now eerily silent. The crew moved with a synchronicity born of countless skirmishes and shared battles. At the tactical station, Orion Voss, a burly man whose reputation as a sharpshooter was known across many star systems, loaded the plasma cannons. His usually jovial face was set in a mask of concentration. "Energy signatures ahead, Captain." "Looks like they're still there," reported Ensign Theo Wren from the sensor array. His youthful voice held a tremble of anticipation mixed with fear. Sterling nodded, his mind racing through tactics and maneuvers. Visual on main now, the screen flickered and then displayed the outpost a series of interconnected modules orbiting a desolate moon. Around it, like wolves among sheep, lurked 3 Consortium corvettes, their sleek dark hulls bristling with weaponry. "Looks like a standard siege setup," murmured Commander Lina Zhou, Sterling's second-in-command, her gaze analyzing the enemy formation. "They're using the outpost as cover, probably looting what they can." Sterling felt a familiar fire kindle in his chest, the flame of duty and protection for those under his command and care. "Prepare to engage. Target their engines. We need them disabled, not destroyed. We're here to protect, not provoke further violence." As the Aurora's lament slid closer, the void between them seemed to shrink palpably. Each second brought a new pulse of risk, a closer dance with death and heroism. "Engage cloaking," Sterling commanded, his voice a low growl. The ship responded, its engines whispering as they masked their presence against the vast backdrop of space. "Fire on my mark." The seconds stretched into eternity, each heartbeat a drum of war in the ears of the crew. Sterling watched, waited, until the perfect moment when the enemy ships aligned with their defensive maneuvers. Now Orion. Mira, evasive pattern Sigma. The ship shuddered as plasma cannons roared, sending streaks of incandescent death towards the Consortium corvettes. 2 beams struck true, and the engines of the enemy ships erupted in silent, fiery blooms of orange and red. Cheers broke out on the bridge, quickly stifled by Sterling's upheld hand. "Stay sharp. This isn't over yet." Almost immediately, the Consortium ships returned fire, streaks of energy sizzling past the Aurora's lament, too close for comfort. Mira's hands were a blur as she maneuvered the ship through evasive patterns, the ship groaning under the stress. "Damage report." Sterling barked. "Shields at 70% and holding. Minor damage to secondary systems," Theo reported, relief in his voice that it wasn't worse. "Keep those shields up." "We can't afford a direct hit," Sterling replied, his eyes scanning the battlefield. "Prepare boarding parties." "We're going in as the damaged Consortium ships struggled to regain control." Sterling seized the opportunity. His crew, trained for moments like these, readied themselves to make the leap across the starry abyss to the besieged outpost. With a deep breath, Captain Leo Sterling led the charge, his figure a silhouette against the backdrop of stars, a beacon of hope in the enveloping darkness of space. The first strike was theirs, but the battle was... Chapter 5. Alliances forget the soft hum of the celestial nomad's engines whispered through the corridors as it cruised towards the fringes of the Orion Spur. Captain Leo Sterling stood at the helm, eyes fixed on the star-streaked void of space that stretched beyond the viewport. The recent skirmish with the Consortium had left its scars not just on the hull of the Nomad, but on the morale of its crew. Sterling knew that the next phase of their mission was crucial, forging alliances. The first destination was Aldara V, a thriving trade hub orbiting a vibrant blue giant star. Its strategic location made it a nexus for commerce and a potential flashpoint for conflict with the Consortium. As the Nomad approached the orbit of Aldara V, the bustling traffic of cargo ships and traders painted a lively scene against the backdrop of the giant blue star. On the bridge, Sterling briefed his crew. "We're not just here to make friends," he began, his voice steady and commanding. "We're here to build a coalition. The Consortium's reach is growing, and we need allies who can stand with us against their tyranny." His second-in-command, Lieutenant Mara Kincaid, nodded in agreement. "I've arranged meetings with the Aldaran Council and several influential traders," she said, tapping on her datapad to pull up the schedule. "They're wary of the Consortium, but they'll need convincing to join us." The negotiations stretched on, with Sterling and his crew addressing concerns, making promises, and laying out strategic plans. As the talks concluded, a sense of cautious optimism hung in the air. The Council agreed to a provisional alliance, committing some of their defensive fleets to joint patrols. With a significant victory in hand, the Nomads set course for their next destination, the mining colonies of the belt of Orionis. These colonies, often overlooked, were vital cogs in the wheel of industry, and they too had felt the heavy hand of the Consortium. As they arrived at the rugged mining colony on Orionis 4, the contrast to Aldara V was stark. Here, life was harsh, carved out of rock and sustained by sheer grit. The miners were a tough crowd, their faces etched with the dust and toil of their labor. Sterling met with the colony leaders in a dimly lit, cavernous room deep within the mines. "We've seen the Consortium strip mines bare and leave communities to wither," he told them, his voice echoing slightly off the stone walls. "We need your strength, your resilience. Join us, and we'll ensure that your mines, your homes, and your families are safeguarded." The miners were a suspicious bunch, their trust hard-earned through years of hardship. But as Sterling spoke, his sincerity resonated with them. They had been looking for a sign, a spark to ignite their resistance against the Consortium's oppression. By the time the Nomad left Orionis 4, another alliance had been forged, tentative, but filled with a rugged hope. As Sterling looked out into the depth of space, he knew the road ahead was fraught with danger. Yet there was a fire kindling among the stars, a rebellion sparked by unity and the promise of a freer galaxy. Chapter 6. Shadows of Doubt in the dim light of the command deck. Captain Leo Sterling stood before the holographic star map, his eyes tracing the flickering lines that connected stars like neural pathways across the brain of the universe. The weight of recent decisions pressed upon him, like the gravity of a neutron star, invisible yet immense. Around him, the low murmur of the crew's voices served as a reminder of the lives that depended on his judgment. They had escaped the Consortium's clutches at Titan's orbit by a hair's breadth, a victory that felt hollow knowing the enemy's insidious plans. "Captain, the Council on Vesta has agreed to meet," Lieutenant Mara Jensen, his communications officer, announced, snapping Sterling back from his reverie. Her voice carried a hopeful note, a rare commodity these days. "Good. Set a course," Sterling replied, his voice steady, but his mind far from calm. The Council could be powerful allies, but every decision now felt like moving pieces in a perilous game of cosmic chess. As the ship charted its course through the stars, Sterling retreated to his quarters, a small room that felt more confining with each passing day. The walls were adorned with charts and images of nebulae, galaxies, and alien worlds a reminder of why he ventured into the unknown, a pursuit of peace, a defense of the defenseless. But peace had its price. Sterling knew that well. The face of Ensign Rowe, a bright young officer who had died under his command, haunted him. The mission that claimed Rowe's life had saved a civilian transport from a Consortium ambush, yet Sterling questioned the cost. Could he have planned better? Moved faster? The doubts gnawed at him. He sat down, activating his personal log. Captain's log, stardate to 75643, he began, his voice less certain than when he spoke to his crew. We've had our share of skirmishes, and though we've come out alive, I can't help but reflect on the decisions made. With every life lost, a part of me questions if there was another way. The door chimed. Enter, he called out, closing the log. Commander Tessa Nguyen stepped in, her expression somber. She was not just his second in command, but a friend who had seen him at his best and worst. Leo, we need to talk about the upcoming mission to Vesta. Of course, Tessa. What's on your mind? It's not just the mission, she said, taking a seat opposite him. It's you. I've seen you carry these burdens alone, doubting your decisions. You're our captain, and we trust you. But you don't have to shoulder this alone. Her words were a balm, yet they stung. Vulnerability was a luxury he felt he couldn't afford, yet here it was, laid bare between them. I know, he admitted, allowing a rare crack in his composed facade. But the choices we make out here, they're not just about tactics. They're about morality, about who we are when we face the darkness. Nguyen nodded, understanding. And that's why you're the captain, Leo. You think about these things. But remember, we chose this path together. Let us help carry the load. Sterling took a deep breath, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. Thank you, Tessa. I'll try. For the crew. For the mission. They spent the next hour strategizing for Vesta, plotting not just their path through space, but navigating the delicate web of politics and alliances. Each decision was debated, each risk weighed. By the time Nguyen left, Sterling felt less isolated, the shadows of doubt receding slightly, replaced by the flicker of collective resolve. In the depth of space, surrounded by stars and the silence of the cosmos, Captain Leo Sterling was reminded that no one, not even a captain, navigates the dark alone.